What ark are we building? Yes, my brother. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I want to find out, you have talked about health message.
What?
Health message.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Noah began to preach when he was, I'm sure, very old.
500 years almost. Eh? Yeah, I think that's what the Bible says.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And he preached for 120 years till the end of the prophecy. And he entered the ark.
Yeah.
Is it because of health that he lived this long?
That's a good question. And the work,
and now,
generally that work was a lot of work.
Yeah.
Manual labor.
True. And now we have our own prophets that have ever lived. They started a message, they couldn't finish it. They are dead. We have our own men that would preach the coming of Jesus or the coming of judgment.
Yes.
But still, we have not yet seen a man like Noah to reach up to the end of the message that he is preaching about. What could be now the constraint of preachers living short before fulfilling what comes out of their mouth? Thank you.
That's a good question, and it's a challenge. Elder.
I think that's a very good question. I will try to answer it in the form of a testimony.
Okay.
First and foremost, I should say that God's design of the human body is the most perfect way that has been laid on the human body. He's designed it perfect. There's no fault with it. I think most of you are aware he was hit by COVID, and for about 3 days, I was on a respirator. I was on oxygen. Now, the oxygen was meant to help me increase the oxygen levels in my lungs. But believe you me, from my experience, that respirator, when it is blowing oxygen into your system, it actually drains you of the moisture in you. You get dehydrated.
Oh, no.
And you feel very thirsty all along in the system. You need to take water for you to be able to do what? To resuscitate.
Wow.
Now, I can imagine when many people were hit by COVID and the medical personnel were overwhelmed in the hospitals, how many could have died, not out of COVID, but out of dehydration?
There you go.
And because I had my sisters and my wife exchanging 24/7 around me, giving me water, I pulled through. Now I imagined, I compared. Here is a human instrument meant to aid me to breathe. But it is draining me of moisture. Okay? But when I'm on my own, the way God has designed me, I can breathe as deeply as I want, but it will not drain me of moisture. So that is proof that God has built us perfectly.
Yeah.
We are fearfully and wonderfully done what?
Made.
And it is when we depart from this design of us that God has done what? Has designed. And He's told us, even the life's manual, what to eat and what not to eat. Of course, I still eat fish and village chicken. I'm also struggling. But I know, by us actually not obeying the health reform, the health message, we have shortened our lives.
For sure.
We have brought on ourselves complications in our health. And even how many of us early in the morning, as young as you are, how many of you early in the morning endeavor to do exercise? If there is a time that is sweetest to sleep, it is in the morning. You want to sleep long in the blankets in the morning. Some of you are just forced by school. Otherwise, you would have been sleeping up to 10. Okay? Yeah. So I think the departure from God's design is what has shortened our life and brought unhealthy or illnesses in our bodies. That is my suspicion and my experience. Thank you.
So we should have also lived up to the fulfillment of the message we are preaching. Because you see, it must manifest. Huh? There must be a witness with us that testifies to the fact that we believe in the message. And that message is lived in our lives. I mean, it's evident in our very own lives. So I like that question as a challenge. I have accepted that question as a challenge. Because the right hand to the third angel's proclamation is health reform. And how many of us, right hand, when you read the Bible and you talk about right hand, it's that hand that implements, that hand of power, isn't it? By which God, does this. He wrote by his right hand, and Christ is seated at the right hand. It's a symbolism of power and authority, isn't it? So now, for Sister White to say that the health reform message is the right hand, now we can all be suspicious that we did not know that at the time when this issue of the beast and the third angel advocacy is going to heighten, there will be need for a message that prepares God's people. And we didn't know it would be a health issue. You go and read Laudato Si, the Pope's encyclical on climate change and creating this world as a heaven, our beautiful planet, making this a peaceful home for. There's a Sunday law there. There's a Sabbath which is being proclaimed to be followed on Sunday, which we know is a spurious Sabbath, isn't it? So there's this advocacy of Sunday law. Then you have a health crisis, which is calling men to a DNA manipulation. I call it manipulation because some people have gone there and coded some structure of DNA and the messenger, whatever, RNA. I don't know why they're tampering with that information that God has put into your cell. We live in strange times. But God has given us a message. God moves ahead of time. He told them that when you see the Romans approaching the first time, then you who are in Judea, you should run where? Into the mountains, isn't it? If you are one of the internet freaks on gospels that are being preached right now, you go and Google Pastor Goya, Pavel Goya. He's a Romanian pastor who I think his ministry is in the US right now. If you just Google Pavel Goya, you will find there's no other person who's preaching us going into a country as imminent as he does. You have no more time in the cities. Your time is up. Go prepare yourself. And to some extent, I'm believing his message. When we went to Lufwanyama 3 weeks ago, we have some farm there. It's a big farm. Water is there and all that, but there are a lot of trees. When I came back, I was so strong. I felt my body like I have never felt because we were breathing. You're breathing oxygen. You are in the environment that God intended you to be. So maybe we would have made it 120 years, isn't it? But we shack up here in the cities, polluted heavily with human inventions, carbon monoxide, and all that, shortening our lives. God has given us a path. I studied somewhere where Sister White was encouraging people not to use drugs. She said that this was a work of Freemasonry. God was encouraging naturopathy. I studied there. We should have been developing our natural use. Sunshine. It unlocks all immunity functions in our body. So why don't you go work in the sun? Go at your farm once in a while. Vitamin D, calciferol action, all those things. I'm closing. Any other contribution? Yes.
Okay, for me, I also want to contribute with regards to what the elder is asked from responding to the question that was asked. I think one of the reasons as to what made Noah to have a prolonged life, to be sustained in his ministry, I think not only the health reforms that he could have adopted, but also the grace of God. I think another powerful example that we can use is that of Daniel. We know the story of Daniel. Daniel was also one of the people or the students in the Bible who adopted the health reform message. And if we are to follow what happened in Babylon, if we are to follow what happened in Babylon, he was called to feast with a king, or feast on foods that are against the health reform message. But then he refrained based on how his character was built up from childhood and so on and so forth. So as we are looking at what should sustain ourselves in this ministry, in this story of building an ark, I think we should put into consideration of these two important factors of asking God's grace to guide us as we are doing his ministry, and also adopting this health reform message. Then there was another question that was asked. I don't know if it was addressed, or where our brother was, he talked about why is it that in these current days we see prophets, pastors, they are dying early. I don't know, I was not so clear with the question if I got it right. So I think in the first place, I think, but I still stand to be corrected with my thought. This is just my thought. I think when someone is in ministry and they tend to fully commit to Christ, to fully do God's work, when it comes to death, I feel it means that for them it's done. Like they've done what they could through God. They've fulfilled what the cause God is calling them for. And when they die, I think it's done for them. And they still, other people